Hello everyone, this is Miss Julia here at the Collierville Birch Library bringing you another virtual Crafternoon. So, today, in a couple weeks actually, the school is going to start, and today is actually July 31st, which means it's Harry Potter's birthday. So I'm going to kind of combine Harry Potter with school in creating a way to sort of personalize your own notebook. So this is just my example piece. You can see I did Hufflepuff colors because I consider myself a Hufflepuff. But you are welcome to do any sort of design or colors that you want. So to do this craft, you're going to need a notebook, of course. You're going to need your paint color that you want to paint your notebook to be. You're going to need probably print something out if you want something special on top of your notebook. Otherwise, you're welcome to freehand as well. You'll need paintbrushes, a paint color to sort of add the kind of grime and sort of age the look of the book a little bit, Sharpies, a pen or something that you'll trace out your words and designs onto your notebook. I'm going to be using a toothbrush for adding the grime to my notebook. You're welcome just to use another paintbrush. I just sort of like how the bristles of the toothbrush look on the notebook. And then you'll need Mod Podge, or if you don't have Mod Podge, you can actually take some like tacky glue or white glue and just water it down a little bit in a bowl. You might also want a bowl to put your paint in. Me, I'm going to be lazy. So to start off with, we're going to take our notebook and we're going to take whatever we want on our notebook and tape that where we would like it, wherever you want on your notebook. So I'm going to have spellbook across the top there, and then you're going to take your pen and you're going to trace out whatever it is that you're going to be painting onto your notebook. You want to press hard, kind of like when we did the knight armor a couple weeks ago. That way, when you take off the paper, your design will be sort of embedded into the notebook cover. So I'm going to fast forward through this so you don't have to spend like 20 minutes watching me trace out spellbook. It traced out, you can lightly lift up an edge just to make sure that it has transferred onto the paper. If it hasn't, you might want to go back and trace it again just to make sure it is all the way. I actually missed a small line, so I went back and did that. And when it is to your satisfaction, you can take off the paper and let me show you what it looks like. So you can see spellbook kind of imprinted onto my book. From here, you're going to be painting the cover with your main color. Now, if you're going to be doing a light color on top of a dark color, I would suggest painting this white first and then doing your color just so it shows up better. You might also be able to get away with just doing two coats. For instance, with mine, my original cover was blue, you can see here, and I painted it yellow, and I just did two coats of yellow, and it seems to have held up pretty well. You can still see some of like the barcode and everything of the notebook, but it's not too noticeable. So I'm going to be painting this spellbook green. In terms of paint, I would suggest using acrylic paint, because if you use tempera paint, that is actually water soluble. So if you're doing the watered down glue later on when we're sealing it, it might kind of smudge or wipe off your paint. So I would suggest acrylic. And again, you can have a bowl to put your acrylic paint in. Me, I'm just going to dump it on the cover because I'm lazy. There we go. Just put it in a bunch of places. And then you're going to take your paintbrush. In terms of paintbrush, I would suggest the foam paintbrush. You can use a bristle brush. The only issue with a bristle brush is a lot of times the sort of hairs will fall out and kind of merge with your painting here. I actually have a couple of hairs in my example piece. it ended up not being too noticeable and kind of gives the book a bit of character. Kind of like it had been scratched or something and then mended. So everything works out in the end. So you're just going to paint your cover. Like so. You might also want something to cover your table with, because obviously I'm going over the edges here. I'm going to kind of smooth it out. Like so. There we go. It's a nice coating. If you want to do a second coat, you're welcome to. I don't think it's necessary with this particular one. But you can see, hopefully, that spellbook is still imprinted. So you still want to be able to see your words or your design that you're doing. Now at this point, you want to actually wait for the paint to dry before you continue. For the sake of time though, I'm going to continue on, but I'm going to grab a piece of paper towel really quick to kind of splotch my my spellbook words so that I can start using Sharpie without damaging the Sharpie. So be right back. So, like this is not an actual part of the process. I'm just doing it for time's sake, so I can kind of outline my spellbook without damaging my Sharpies. You're also welcome to sort of do it in paint too if you don't have any Sharpies, but I would recommend the Sharpies over like the Crayola watercolor markers, because again, like tempera paint, the markers are water soluble, so when you go and put the Mod Podge or the watered down glue on later on, it might sort of wipe off everything. So you can see now that I've basically just taken off the paint of the spellbook area, just so I can continue on with the next step. If you're doing this at home, you want to leave this until it's dry before moving on. At this point, you can choose what you want your letters to be, what color they are. You can see I just chose black for my example piece, just to keep up with the Hufflepuff colors. And here, I might see if I can find a silver marker really quick. I don't have any in this cup. Again, be right back. Alright, so I couldn't find my silver Sharpie. I know I have one somewhere. That's okay for right now. I was going to try and do Slytherin colors. Instead, I'm just going to use black. If you don't have Sharpies, you can use paint. You could also use like glitter glue. I also know that they have like these paint pens at stores. So whatever you want. So from here, you're just going to trace out your letters and your design, whatever you decided to put onto your notebook, and colored it in accordingly. So again, I'm just going to jump ahead so you don't have to watch me trace out letters. There we go. I just traced it out for time's sake. Normally you could color it in whatever you'd like. And again, this will look more like this if you wait for the paint to dry and do your spell or your writing on top of the paint rather than wiping it off like I did for time. You're also welcome to do any sort of details that you want. So you notice that I actually just free-handed the shield. I put in some little lines just to make it look interesting. And at this point, we're going to add the sort of grime to the notebook to make it look like it's aged. You can use a brown ink pad if you have it at home, and you can just sort of brush it along the edges if you'd like. I do not have a brown ink pad, so I'm just going to be using brown paint and doing what is known as dry brushing. So dry brushing is basically you get a little paint onto whatever your paintbrush, or in this case toothbrush, that you are going to be using, and kind of dab it along to the side until you barely have any paint on it left. So it kind of creates that dry paint look, if you will. And again, this will be dry before you start doing this. and then you just sort of brush it on. Now, of course, since my paint isn't dry, it's not going to show up very well for me. But you might want to sort of concentrate on the edges, because that's usually where people will grip the book. So that means that the edges are going to be dirtier than maybe the rest of the book. And you just keep putting on your grime, your aging, until it is to your satisfaction. So like I said, you won't be able to see it very well at the moment on my wet piece. But you can see here the smudging that I did with the brown paint to make it look like it's well loved. Now when you have the brown paint all dried and the Sharpie is all dried, everything is dried on here, you're going to take your Mod Podge or your watered down glue and seal it in. Now since this is wet, I won't be able to do that part, but I can kind of pretend. So I would use tacky glue, or I use tacky glue rather. You can use white glue. You just put a little bit of glue in your bowl and just a little bit of water, just enough to make it sort of runny. It's a little easier to paint with. You would mix it all together in your bowl. Again, if you're using Mod Podge, I don't think you would have to water down Mod Podge at all. That's usually pretty easy to paint on. And once you have your glue water all mixed together, you just sort of lightly brush it on, making sure you get every corner of your notebook so that it all seals in. And you would let that dry as well. And once it's all finished, you would get this finished product. Now, if you have more of like a composition notebook rather than a notebook that has this wire binding to it, you'd be welcome to paint both sides. You could actually probably paint both sides of this type of notebook too, just to make it look like a full cohesive book, but it's not necessary. So yeah, so that's a fun way to sort of personalize your books. You don't have to do Harry Potter themed. If you want to put like your own name on it, or maybe you want to do your school colors with the little mascot on it, or whatever you want, it's highly personalizable. Other than that, I hope you all enjoyed this little craft, and I hope you stay safe, stay healthy, and enjoy the rest of your day. Bye!